What's up everyone? Here's another compilation video full of lore and history about various film franchises I've covered in the past. It includes topics around the sequels to The Thing movie, the Dire Wolf Terminator in the comic books, the Rev 9 Terminator in the latest movie, some history about the creature in Jeepers Creepers based off the comic book story, a look into the history of the Infinity Stones from Marvel, the tragic story of King Kong's parents, and the mega kaiju seen in the movie Pacific Rim Uprising. The purpose of these 1 hour-long compilations is to bring up topics that some new viewers might have missed. It also serves as a way to catch up on my older videos in longer sessions. I'm going to leave timestamps in the description and in the comment section. If you like these 1 hour videos, then I'm going to leave links to other videos like this. That's it for the intro. Let's get started. What happened after the ending of the movie The Thing? Directed by John Carpenter and released in 1982, The Thing was seen as an alien life form that could infect organic material and replicate its form. This being would remain hidden while trying to find a way to infect other bodies. It could mimic their appearance and voice, appearing as a copy of the original. Before we get started, if you like these kinds of videos that dig deep into the lore and stories of franchises, then consider supporting my channel on Patreon. It's the best way to directly help me out and make more videos like this. So let's get started. The 1982 version was the adaptation of the 1951 version called The Thing from Another World, but they both took ideas from the 1938 novella called Who Goes There, which was written by John W. Campbell Jr. It was later discovered in 2018 that the novella was actually a shorter version of the full story called Frozen Hell. This information was uncovered by the author Alec Navala Lee. A fundraiser was then set up to publish the full story. During the ending of the 1982 film, we see two survivors, MacReady and Childs, still alive. The film is left on a cliffhanger, not knowing what happened after, but the story was continued later on in the form of comic books. 3 of them were released from 1991 to 1994. In this video, we are going to explore the official sequels and also the unreleased sequel about The Thing. The first 3 we will look at were part of a trilogy story, but all of them on this list were published by Dark Horse Comics. The title of the first one is taken from the 1951 novella, The Thing from Another World, and the next 2 comics kept the same name, but only adding another title underneath. It opens up with a scene in Antarctica, covered in a blanket of cold and darkness. The image of a man is seen walking somewhere to find another man amongst the snow. As the man within the snow awakens, a beam of light appears upon him. Someone has found him. Another person calls out, "He's alive, get the doctor." The man had no extreme damage from frostbite. This man later wakes up in the infirmary of a ship called the Misaki Maru. The nurse attending him says, "Your friend saved you, but he went back to the research station for the others." Knowing there are no others, he panics and says, "Get out of my way, I have to stop him." But he's stopped in his tracks and given an injection to calm him down. He awakens later on, only to wonder what happened. The research station was destroyed, so why would Childs bring him out there? Did he plan for someone to find MacReady? What if he's infected? He runs a quick test on his blood. The cells of a contaminated organism has its own survival instinct. It would react like a whole animal would if threatened. He lights a spark and dips it in the blood. No response. Okay, he's fine. MacReady would steal a helicopter and escape the ship later on. He picks up a trail of footprints and follows it. As the chopper starts to run out of fuel, he's forced to land nearby the research station. He quickly searches for the frozen bodies left behind and begins to burn them all. Despite them being frozen, they still pose a risk. A single cell can infect another organism. Shortly after, he's apprehended by a group of armed men. They were sent in to find out what happened. MacReady tells them the bodies were contaminated and duplicated by something they found in a crashed spacecraft. MacReady is handcuffed, and before they leave, they find another body. But they do plan to have their bio team look at it. They head out and wait for their chopper at the landing zone. Things get worse when a member of the team appears to be infected. A few injuries occurred, but they stopped it. However, the rescue chopper was also damaged, and the other chopper MacReady used was out of fuel. Commander Erskine tells MacReady, "There's an Argentine research station 30 clicks away. They've got a doctor. If they move all night, they might just make it." MacReady is then forced to help him pull the bodies all night. As daylight comes, they realize they went the wrong way. The two of them have a short scuffle, and MacReady gets a hold of the firearm. But just then, a few men and Childs show up. MacReady is knocked out by Erskine and taken into custody. Childs explains later he brought MacReady's body out into the snow to be found, and he returned to the site to burn the bodies, but he got lost, and the Argentine people found him. He's taken to their camp and tested once again, along with Childs. However, one of the men with them was infected. Its true form emerges and escapes the campsite. The team follows and searches for it. It has to be stopped. Childs would locate the creature and destroy it using an explosive device. The team gets back to the camp, but Erskine is acting anxious to leave the site and gets back to the radio. They start to suspect that Erskine could be infected, and his cooperation to eliminate the last creature could be part of his cover-up, just to get back to a populated area to infect a larger region. Commander Erskine makes his way to a submarine while he's tracked down by MacReady and Childs. His true form is revealed, and he starts an attack on the crew on board. MacReady and Childs would follow him inside. The submarine suffers severe damage. The crew try to reach the escape capsule, and it's up to Childs and MacReady to stop the thing. With no access to fire in the submarine, they decide to freeze it somehow. When they reach the escape capsules, the thing appears and attacks the rest of the men with them. Someone has to make sure this thing doesn't stay alive. It's trapped within the submarine, so now is the time to take action. Childs decides to stay behind. He pulls a lever and lets MacReady float to the surface, while he stays behind as the submarine sinks to the bottom. The ending shows MacReady falling asleep on a block of ice. Even with the cold wind affecting his health, at least for now, he is safe. The story is continued in the next comic book called The Thing from Another World, Climate of Fear. Released later in 1992, the story continued over 4 issues. We see MacReady rescued by Argentinian people. One man calls out, "Here, I found one," and he's still resting on the block of ice in the water, so they reel him in. One man notices a sea lion in the water. It appears injured, but this is only a ruse. The thing has infected other life forms and appears as a combination of multiple beings fused together. MacReady would later awake from his sleep. Panicked and confused, he runs out of his room. But what he sees is a shock. A village, animals, green vegetation. What is this place? He was relocated to an area on the peninsula of the Tierra del Fuego, the land of fire as some call it. The doctor knew about what happened in Antarctica, and she still went looking for MacReady. While staring at the sheep through the window, MacReady plans his escape. He leaves the window open and waits. One guard named Agapito would check on MacReady, only to get jumped as he entered the room. As the others hear gunfire nearby, they locate MacReady. He's eliminated all of the sheep. They think the man has become paranoid, so he's put down with tranquilizer darts. As Josito rounds up the sheep, one of them is alive and unfazed by the event. Part of its body extends to infect Josito's arm. The thing is here, but the others don't know. They hear the screams of Josito and come out. They start to shoot its head to take it down faster, but the creature is truly not done. Its tongue reaches out to infect a nearby man, and the cycle continues. Despite its body taking so much damage from gunfire, it splits into 2 entities. MacReady tells Agapito, "Stop shooting. It does not work. You have to use fire. It's the only way." A long, sleepless night passes slowly at the Tierra del Fuego Environmental Research Station. Everyone is going through unrest because one of them or more is not human. Someone is infected from their trip to Antarctica. An argument occurs between Agapito and another man. This man would reach for a nearby weapon, but another man stops him and puts him down. Everyone is then confined to their own room. Perhaps this would let everyone feel more at ease. But later on, a hand emerges from the ground. The terror has not ended it's gotten worse. The body of what looks like Carlos shows up later on. Two men are later attacked and infected by the thing. It is slowly expanding its reach within the camp. Agapito would be found tied up and gagged. He assumes it was done by MacReady, who has disappeared suddenly. There's also the communications shack, which is now lit on fire. Two watchmen, Fuente and Soto, are missing. The group expand their search to the airfield and they encounter another creature. They unload their weapons on it, but it has little effect. MacReady shows up to save them by burning the thing into the ground. But then something happens. A bulge within that body appears before them. It expands and opens, and out comes a new creature, but it runs off before it's taken down. As MacReady chases after it, he stumbles upon a burning body, and who else does he see? Childs. But why is he here, and how? Childs goes on to explain what happened in the submarine. The Navy showed up to investigate the wreck, and in turn they found him. As they conduct more blood tests, they uncover MacReady's blood might be infected. Cruz was the one who buried Dr. Deseado. They torch him, and he turns into a creature. But while they shoot it, his head escapes through the window. MacReady would use this distraction to escape and run into the woods. He's visibly upset. He cannot believe his blood test results. There has to be a mistake. It's later suggested that the ashtray was infected by Deseado. Any cell exposed to it would become infected. The rest of the group would be confined by Childs and his men, but later in the night, Agapito would escape. With only a bladed weapon in his hand, he plans out his own mission and disappears into the night. MacReady would show up a few moments later. He confronts Dr. Viale and he explains about his own personal blood test. He's fine, so it's possible the ashtray was contaminated with the thing's cells. Childs would appear shortly after, and as MacReady tells him about the contaminated ashtray, Childs admits he knows because he planned it all along. As Childs goes on to chase MacReady through the woods, he's intercepted by the other men. They waste no time and torch Childs right away. Agapito would contact his men, who were still being isolated, but all of them were infected. He would even slice off his own arm, trying to cut the infection off in its early stages. The thing would appear later on, but now as a larger bug-like form. As it closes in on MacReady, he has no weapons to fight back, but he does receive backup from up above. A napalm strike is unloaded upon the creature. Flames burst all around, engulfing the monster. It screams out loudly as it burns to the ground. The last comic book in this trilogy story is The Thing from Another World, Eternal Vows. It's spread over 4 issues, and the last one was released in 1994. This one takes place in Wallace Harbour of New Zealand. A fishing boat called the Gettysburg is docked nearby. We get a glimpse of an old man by the dock, just fishing. We then meet Simon Powell spending time with his girlfriend, Jenny Campbell. Simon is part of the crew of the Gettysburg, but he's not leaving until the local murders are solved. During a bar fight, we also meet Detective Sergeant Rowan. He's part of the New Zealand police force, and Samuel Holt, another member of the crew aboard the Gettysburg. The old man at the dock gets attacked by something, but his scream alerts Sergeant Rowan. He comes running to the source, but it's too late. Another victim. Simon Powell and Samuel Holt would show up at the dock minutes later. They greet each other, and Samuel does not know what's going on. The next day, Sergeant Rowan finds Jenny Campbell at her work. He asks her questions about Simon Powell last night. He reveals to her at 12:37 a.m. the body of Simon Powell was found on the dock. Jenny faints upon hearing the news. Later that night, Jenny goes through a transformation and attacks a cat she took in. Through the cells from Powell that are inside her, she hears his voice. She has to replace her depleted cells with live cells. Jenny then wanders outside at night and bumps into Samuel Holt. She tries to absorb him, but is unable to. His form then changes into Simon Powell. They found each other and are together again, despite being monsters. We then get a glimpse of a new character to this story. A chopper lands in a grassy field, and this man exits while holding a flamethrower. R.J. MacReady has returned, and he's here to find the thing. Now we see the thing from the first comic book story. When it sunk with the submarine, it remained there until fish came nearby. The fish would get infected and then captured by the fishing boat. As it gets pulled in by the net and onto the boat, the infected fish would attack Simon Powell. He became another version of the Thing. After he infected Jenny that night, they were now connected. Simon Powell would change his form into Samuel Holt and return to the dock. He is approached by the captain, MacReady, and Sergeant Rowan. Powell is taken into custody and questioned a few times, but they also extract a blood sample from him. The results are what they assume. His blood reacts to the heat, and he reveals his true form. It tries to break free, but MacReady burns it with the flamethrower. As its flesh burns away, you can see the other humans it has absorbed. Its cells are dying. But as the flames settle down, we now see the image of Jenny. It takes the form of DNA it sampled, but the real Jenny is still out there. Sergeant Rowan and MacReady would track down Jenny at her place. MacReady would miss his chance to burn her, and as she escapes, she infects other people along the way. Jenny would later burn a lot of boats to isolate the island. As MacReady tries to swim for his escape, Sergeant Rowan takes the flamethrower. He holds off the Thing creatures as they approach him, but he's overwhelmed and takes his own life as everything burns away. When things settle down, the Gettysburg leaves the port, and the body of a female is found on board. The captain ends up being the new Thing. It starts to attack the rest of the crew quickly. MacReady would fill the ship with gasoline and light it on fire. Jenny's body would appear after the Thing's body is burnt away. MacReady jumps off the ship and swims to shore. But the threat is not over yet. Jenny's head comes after him, with legs and tentacles reaching out for him. MacReady kicks it away, and it sinks into the water. Hopefully this time, the nightmare is over. The end. There was another comic book in 1993 called The Thing from Another World, Questionable Research. This one ignored the events of the first 3 comic books and came up with its own story for a sequel. It takes place after the ending of the 1982 movie, going back to Outpost 31 in Antarctica. The team here is looking for files, photos, and records of what happened, even specimens. They recover a body of the Thing and transport it back to the Donacek ship. The team seems to know what this creature is, as one person says, "I'm not worried about the size, it's the whole concept that creeps me out." Some other data was collected in the form of simulator modules. They could contain notes on infection and other things. Another member left behind some audio tapes, which they will listen to later on. When they get back to base, the large body is transported, but they are unaware a claw from the body has fallen off and is now infecting animals on site, and it comes into contact with a human also. The audio tape is the one recorded by MacReady in the film. It says this: "We still have nothing to go on. One other thing. I think it rips through your clothes when it takes you over. Windows found, some shredded long johns, but the name tag was missing. They could be anybody's. Nobody trusts anybody now, and we're all very tired. There's nothing else I can do. Just wait. R.J. MacReady, helicopter pilot, U.S. Outpost number 31. One scientist overlooked the notes left by Blair. Her tests gave her more accurate results about the spread of infection. If it was in a warmer climate and available transportation, it would infect Earth's entire population in about 3,000 hours or 4 months. One member named Hooper says the risk of studying this creature is too high. They need to eliminate every specimen. But Douglas cares more about scientific studies than the safety of mankind. Arlene is found by another team member, and it appears as if she's been infected and already mutating. The cycle has already started. She attacks the man, and the rest of them are unaware of the danger. They hear gunshots and come running, but as they open the door, they are attacked, and more casualties occur. The blame is put on Douglas for what's happening. As most of the team gets wiped out, Douglas makes it topside. A fire breaks out, and he jumps overboard. The fire spreads even further and results in the ship exploding. Douglas is seen in the ending. He thinks the threat is over, but a seagull lands beside him and makes an unusual sound. As he looks at its eyes, he realizes the Thing is inside the bird. As it flies off, Douglas is hopeless and left with regret. The last comic book was released in 2011, The Thing, The Northman Nightmare. This book was supposed to tie into the prequel movie. The story was to predate earlier sightings that we know of, taking place in a time from long ago. We are taken to the year 1121 AD, the time of the Vikings. When they reach the icy cold region, their ship is at risk of being crushed, so they continue on foot. It doesn't take long until something goes wrong. One member falls into the cold waters, but was actually pulled in by something. As they are unable to save him, the group must venture onward. They were expecting a previous party to greet them, but nobody showed up. All the more reason to be suspicious of their surroundings. Something is not right. Along their journey, they find bodies of animals and some obscure bones, a creature that is a combination of man and beast. They have been on many battlefields before, but they have never seen anything like this. When they reach the campsite, the gate is open. They find bodies of the deceased. A group of survivors are the only ones left. One woman explains what happened, but there's more to this story. The survivors here are all infected. Some new creature or monster reveals itself. It attacks the men, and many of them are eliminated quickly. They track down one of the escaped women and burn it in the end. The alien spacecraft is also damaged and burning within the ice, as it's trapped in a cold prison. It's going to be at least half a year until any ships are sent to rescue them. They will try to survive and wait, but when the others come looking for them, what will they find? The end. In 2002, a video game sequel called The Thing was released. It was on the Xbox Original, Windows PC, and PlayStation 2. It introduces two teams of special forces sent to investigate Outpost Number 31 in Antarctica. The teams are led on ground by Captain Blake and via radio by Colonel Whitley. The team later gets attacked by things they never encountered before. They would locate a craft that could be of extraterrestrial origin, along with an audio tape from R.J. MacReady. A body is also discovered. It belongs to Childs, one of the survivors from the 1982 movie. Members of the group would encounter creatures. Everyone panicked and split up. Blake would learn that Colonel Whitley is no longer in contact with the ground team, which seems odd. We later see Colonel Whitley reveal his true motive. He's infected himself with the Thing gene, but also he's able to control it. He is the first successful test subject in turning the Thing into a weapon. Blake is also seen to have some type of cellular anomaly in his body. He's been exposed to the virus, but is still human. He might be resistant to the virus. Blake would learn that Colonel Whitley wants to infect the entire world with the virus. Once the chopper arrives to pick him up, he can leave, but this doesn't happen. In the final battle, Whitley turns into a giant creature, while Blake and a helicopter pilot battle against it. After it's defeated, the pilot is revealed to be R.J. MacReady. There was a sequel to the video game which was planned later on. The team had a vision for the sequel, but all they had completed at the time was a proof of concept demo. It would continue on with Blake and MacReady from the last game, and introduce new enemies all linked to the Thing. But around 2003, it was cancelled due to property, assets, and rights issues, and they were forced to shut down. During an interview, the developers had this to say about the cancelled sequel. "We had the contract in place to make the sequel, and were pretty excited about it. We had a very cool prototype of dynamic infection and some really imaginative Thing burst outs. I particularly liked the one where the person would split in half, and the top half would jump to the ceiling and start swinging around like an orangutan, with his intestines turned into tentacles." So that covers the various sequels to the Thing franchise. We covered the multiple comic books and video games. It was a lot to go over in one video. With all the different stories in the Terminator franchise, there have been quite a few villains across many stories. But the most recognizable Terminator is the T-800 series, and after this, the villains just became more advanced and dangerous. One character across the comic books that I did mention before but never really did an entire video on was the Dire Wolf Terminator. I mentioned it very briefly just to explain its short appearance in that story, but I guess I can do a video to cover what else happened. So, the Dire Wolf is linked to the story of the T-Infinity Terminator. The T-Infinity made an appearance in the Terminator 2 Infinity comic book series. This entire story was heavily based around different timelines. But what makes this new Terminator so different is how incredibly powerful it is. Skynet's artificial intelligence was trying to preserve itself in the future, So it ran various simulations to see the probability of a successful mission and what the outcome would be. The T-Infinity was seen to destroy the T-800, T-1000, and the T-X, in their own respective timelines, of course. Skynet was trying to keep its presence in the future by protecting the main timeline where it existed. Terminators in other timelines had to be eliminated because the future was changed in various ways. The T-Infinity was merely a prototype at this stage, but the results proved to be very promising. This story first mentions an event taking place on Earth in 2033 in what appears to be a group of human soldiers overcoming the robot army known as Terminators. The story then shifts back to the year 2009. We are introduced to Uncle Bob, a Terminator who protects John Connor. And as history has told us, where there is a protector, there is always a hunter. This is where the T-Infinity appears in this timeline. Uncle Bob and others like him must be terminated, because their existence is a source of corruption in the time stream. The T-Infinity completes its mission here. Uncle Bob is destroyed, and the T-Infinity gets recalled by Skynet. The story of the T-Infinity continues in the Terminator Revolution comic book series, which takes place in the year 2015. Tara Connor is the wife of John Connor at this point. She is also the new target for the T-Infinity, which shows up in the same year. It appears at some abandoned airport and resumes its mission. The human resistance is planning to attack multiple regional servers connected to Skynet. Once they are offline, they will plan a missile strike against Skynet. But things get worse when the T-Infinity locates Tara Connor in their base. A lot of humans are defeated, so it continues its search for its target. The T-Infinity does suffer some damage against Tara and John, but it is still a machine. It continues on. It does not stop. John attacks it from behind with a metal rod. It causes some system malfunction, and both of them are ripped through time. Now the story takes place in 1996, the time when Sarah and young John Connor are on the run, trying to hide from multiple Terminators that are tracking them down. When the T-Infinity was damaged in battle, it was unable to respond to Skynet's commands. It never returned, and never reported its current status. This posed as a problem to Skynet. If the T-Infinity was captured by the Resistance, it could be turned against them, and so they decide to have it destroyed. Skynet releases the Dire Wolf Terminator. But, unlike the other series that are sent on time-traveling missions, this one takes the appearance of an animal, fully armored, agile, quick, and rather large. This Terminator poses another problem for humans. We then shift back to the year 2015. Tara Connor is now leading the Resistance, considering John's disappearance with the T-Infinity. But it's not long until the Dire Wolf tracks them down, and this thing is huge. Not only can it deal with grounded vehicles, it's even seen to jump incredibly high, just to take down some hunter-killer scouts above it. Apparently, the Terminators here do not have the Dire Wolf in their database, so they perceive it as a threat and attack it. But even the T-800s don't stand a chance against it. Back in 1996, the adult version of John Connor tracks down his younger self and his mother, as all of them flee from a pack of T-850s trying to terminate Sarah. In order to not affect the future anymore, the older version of John Connor does not reveal who he really is. The young John Connor believes this person is another Terminator sent to protect him. At this point in the story, the Dire Wolf enters a research facility in Willow Grove. It connects to a temporal device that can open portals to other timelines, the year 1996, where the T-Infinity is located. Meanwhile, the T-Infinity just shredded through a pack of T-850s. A local SWAT team opens fire on it, but the bullets are stopped in midair. This is because it needs to visualize the threat to stop incoming bullets in midair. John and Sarah later realize that any surprise attack will make contact with its body. While the young John Connor and Sarah are watching from far away, the T-Infinity tracks them down to Bluff Creek. It starts to shoot, and they exchange gunfire. As this occurs, the older John Connor comes from hiding, armed with a missile launcher. He opens fire. Direct hit. The T-Infinity suffers severe damage. Its right arm is now blown off. But it's not over yet. It is still a machine. It continues on, hunting Sarah Connor. But shortly after, help arrives, from the most unexpected of places. The dire wolf has tracked down the T-Infinity. It lunges forward, grabbing a hold of its head with its huge jaws, and, with incredible strength, the dire wolf removes the head of the T-Infinity. John is aware that he needs the body of the T-Infinity to use its time displacement device for his own use. He needs it to get back to his own timeline. So, they all fire upon the dire wolf. It's heavily armored, but explosives end up destroying it. This marks the end of the dire wolf and the T-Infinity Terminator, but not before John unlocks a secret from within the T-Infinity. When he arrives back to his own timeline in the year 2015, he rushes to Terra about some urgent news. As their team made their successful attack on Skynet's servers, the only thing left is to launch a missile strike. But John discovered the hidden location of Skynet's central AI hub. New coordinates are placed, and the strike ends up destroying Skynet. Even though this gives everyone in the past a chance at a brighter future, Terminators still roam the Earth in the future, and it's up to John and the others to keep fighting. Every 23 years, during the spring season, a demonic creature will feed on man for 23 days. The creature appears to be unstoppable, almost invincible. It picks out specific targets, looking for a certain type of scent. It seeks out organs from its victims to replace the ones it has, possibly from old age or from being damaged. After the 23rd day, it goes back into hibernation. This cycle would repeat itself, as it always has for many years before. The creeper has left a path of misery, despair, and death. The 3 films on Jeepers Creepers give us an idea of what the creature looks like, its abilities, how it hunts, and small personality traits. Over the course of these films, the fans have wanted more lore about the demon. I have covered topics about the films in other videos. Only the second movie gave us a small insight about its past. But this was during a deleted scene. It shows the creeper has at some point been around during the medieval ages. But today, we are going to look at the comic book story released in 2018 by Dynamite Entertainment. It spread over 5 issues. We now go deeper into the mythology and lore about this demonic creature. It opens up with the creeper flying around during a full moon, but as you can see, it's under some form of distress. It tries to land on the ground, but instead crashes. Something must be wrong. You can see it's missing its left hand. We are then introduced to Devin James, arriving in Mexico City from a flight. He's here as a grad student studying the mythology of the so-called dragon. The creeper is seen again within his vehicle, driving down a dark road, but he soon stops. A man calls out for help by saying, "Hey, I could use a hand here," and the creeper replies with, "So could I." There was a deleted scene in the first movie that showed the creeper talk in English. The script also had portions where the creature spoke, but it was all removed because the director felt it was not the right time for this reveal. Devin would then reach the lost Aztec city of Teotihuacan, which means the birthplace of the gods. He's part of a group tour, but decides to explore things on his own. While he looks for the temple of the feathered serpent, he's discovered by a young boy in the same area, and this is where the mythology of the creeper gets explored. During the ancient times of the Aztec people, young men were kept in entire stables, ready to be used in rituals. Some of them would consider it an honor. As the ritual commenced, the summoning of their god began. They would rip out the still beating heart of the victim, and with the coppery smell of hot blood, he came. The dragon god stood there and accepted their offer. He ate the heart. This was a way of keeping the angry gods happy. The boy with him gets scared of the story and runs off. Devin follows him, only to get arrested by local authorities. He is later set free, but upon leaving the building, he is approached by a local woman. She offers him a box and says to him, "Take it and leave." As Devin opens the box, we see an item that is very familiar. As he touches it, the creeper becomes aware, This could mean it shares a connection with the weapon it creates. Devin would later meet a man at the Cherokee Indian Reservation who offers to help him with his research. In Native American legend, they also have a creature from the pages of their history. Devin is searching on how a single god is crossing multiple cultures, being part of their myths, legends, and tales. And here, it's known as the Uktena, the horned serpent. The man would offer Devin a drink to help him see things clearly. He says this: "If you seek knowledge, you must first make the journey." The Uktena has lived amongst them since man first walked upright, maybe before even. He was the most feared and respected of all the dark creatures. My people knew to feed his hunger voluntarily would protect us from his inhuman wrath. He would feed on the blood and meat of the living. When Devin went deeper into his vision, he makes a connection with the creeper and it becomes aware. The creeper then says this: "Devin, knowledge you seek. Seek, and I will find you." Devin wakes up and notices the cut on his hand is real. The old man did that to him as part of the visions he would see. He then makes a connection with the creeper once again, appearing before it as possibly a psychic image. He then fades away as the creeper approaches. He continues his journey, seeking the answers of this mythical god, this winged creature of ancient cultures. He drives off and arrives in historic Roanoke. Devin seems to be suffering from mental images of the creeper, even occurring when he's driving. He's forced off the road when he gets more mental images. During this trauma that Devin is going through, even the creeper receives this as well. Because of this, it is unable to sleep, so it sets out to find Devin. The hunt has begun. Devin would later sleep at a local bed and breakfast. He speaks to the owner in the morning, and they discuss local legends. After getting no answers from her, he heads off to the Historical Society. When he's there, he sees people cosplaying, but decides not to participate. Instead, he cuts his hand with a bladed weapon he received to see what happens. His vision starts to blur, and he sees a moment in the past. The creature attacks the local people, ripping off their heads, cutting up bodies, and crushing their heads. This is pure mutilation. He stands his ground against the creeper, pointing the bladed weapon at him and saying, "Stay back, I'm not afraid to use this." The creeper grabs it from him while saying, "Neither am I," and proceeds to carve something into Devin's arm. He wakes up from the vision with people surrounding him, worried about what happened to him. Devin feels a pain on his arm. He looks at it to see the name, Centralia, cut into his skin. As Devin explores a coal mine, the timeline of the story then shifts to 1962. Coal miners are going through a passage of unexplored tunnels. Some say that the areas are haunted, or it might contain some ancient crypt. As they smash through a thin wall, they uncover a vast area and the body of Dylan Chapman, but also many other bodies. Things turn for the worse when the creeper shows up and eliminates one of them. As the other man tries to run, flames engulf this area, which was caused by the light bulb on top of a helmet. As fire fills the room, an explosion occurs. As the fire burns out of control from the mines, people up top are starting to feel ground vibrations. The fires from the coal mine will burn for a long time. The city of Centralia is doomed. Upon leaving the coal mine, Devin tries to leave within his car, but moments later, the roof of his car is ripped open and he's taken away by the creeper. Devin would awaken to find himself hanging upside down. The creeper approaches him and marks his body with blood. In another situation, the creeper kisses Devin, which makes this creature even more weird than we know. The creeper would also run his tongue along Devin's face, licking up the blood. This moment must have been disgusting for Devin, but he focuses on cutting the ropes that confine him. He uses a sharp bone to cut free and fights back. Devin throws a skull at its face. It stuns him. Then, pieces of rock from above fall down and land on the creeper. It stuns him long enough for Devin to finish it off by smashing a rock into the creeper's head. Devin passes out shortly, but wakes up moments later. He starts seeing strange visions that turn into nightmares, with voices calling to him and saying, We are one. Devon feels a pain over his left eye, and it becomes part of the new eye for the one the creeper lost earlier. The voices continue. We are one with him. The ending shows Devon on a table with both of his eyes missing. The story ends with the voice saying, "We are one with the creeper." Any organ or body part taken from a victim is used as a replacement on the creeper. It was a very unfortunate demise for Devon, but once he got captured, he was doomed. We did find out that the creeper was part of many ancient cultures and seen as a god to some, so it does expand on the mythology of the creature in some way. As I read through the story, there's a part where a picture of a man is shown. The shadow of the creeper stands in front of him, but behind the man, carved into the tree, you can see the words Croatoan. It's not brought up in the story, but it could be linked to a real-life event a long time ago. From the year 1584 to 1585, different groups of British settlers came to Roanoke Island. This consisted of a scientific and military presence, but they were driven away in 1586 by the local people. Then, in 1587, a group of families came back, hoping that their non-military presence would be more welcomed. They wanted to settle in a new world, but in 1590, they all disappeared. There was no trace of what happened to the colonists. The only clues left behind were the letters CRO and the word Croatoan. It is believed that the settlers just moved to a new area to avoid the bad weather, failing crops, starvation, and hostile local tribes. But if this small thing was part of the comic book story, it's possible that the colonists left Roanoke Island due to a bigger threat, like a demon or a creature that could not be stopped. When I saw this picture in the comic book, it was a nice throwback to history. These are the things I like to watch and read about. During some footage of the second movie, the director says, "Everyone wants to know what the creeper is." And he says this, "I don't think he's a religious character, demon, or an alien. I don't know what he is, but I do think he started off as a man, and then a horrible curse was put upon him, and this hunger is the only way he can survive." The largest kaiju in the movie Pacific Rim Uprising was the Mega Kaiju. It was something very unique and different compared to Slattern from the first movie. The Mega Kaiju was a hybrid of 3 other kaiju, Raijin, Hakuja, and Shrikethorn, merged together. During the story of the movie, we learn that Newton Geisler became influenced by the precursors. This was all because he shared a rift with the kaiju brain alone in the first movie, although the effects were not immediate. He is later used by the precursors. He ends up helping Lee Wen-Shao to create the first kaiju Jaeger hybrid called Obsidian Fury. This special Jaeger was controlled by a kaiju brain, which is why it turns against the other Jaegers in the movie. Obsidian Fury was meant to be an alternative. It is the first Jaeger to not be controlled by human pilots, and so they end up mass-producing Jaeger drones. But because they are hybrids from clone kaiju DNA, their kaiju nature reminds them of their original mission, to open the breach to let more kaiju come through. And this is done by using their power cores, and it just so happens that 3 kaiju come through the breach. Now, it's mentioned later on in the story that the precursors influenced Newton to release the Rippers. Now, these were something new in the movie. They appeared as robot kaiju hybrid creatures. They have tentacles that allow them to move quickly on the ground, and they also have lasers that can be used to cut through kaiju flesh. The Rippers' main purpose is to act as stitches on a kaiju. This is where an army of them covers all 3 kaiju. They cut into their bodies and reconnect them to form the Mega Kaiju. In this form, it appears to display a few attributes of the other kaiju. It has 2 tails that have spear-shaped ends, which are great for piercing into Jaegers. The tail looks similar to Shrikethorn's. The 2 arms and 4 legs are similar to Hakuja's, while the shoulders were taken from Shrikethorn's and fused with Raijin's upper arm structure. Its massive head is a fusion of all 3 kaiju. The lower jaw separates into 2 tusks. Its face also has a total of 10 eyes, 5 on each side of its head. The color on its body is the same as the other kaiju. It was brown, gray, and it also had glowing blue parts on its body. While it is a fusion of 3 kaiju, it was shown to use Raijin's ability to use kinetic energy, either in the form of a slap or a fist on the ground for massive impact. While it was a massive kaiju, even the efforts of 4 Jaegers could not overcome it. One by one they got destroyed, until only Gypsy Avenger was left. The Mega Kaiju's role was to reach Mount Fuji and plunge itself into the volcano. This was going to trigger an extinction event, and would allow the precursors to colonize the planet when mankind was wiped out. Since the Mega Kaiju had multiple brains, it would take too long to destroy one brain, and so they needed one massive strike that would destroy it right away. This is when Scrapper brought a missile to Gypsy Avenger. As Gypsy Avenger held on, it brought it high into the sky, and as it flew back towards Mount Fuji, its arms built up a tremendous amount of heat and momentum. It then smashes into the Mega Kaiju, killing it by separating its body in half. With all the different Terminator movies and comic books out there, it seems each one brings us a new Terminator villain in some way. Most of them are repeated stories of the same mission, which is send a Terminator back in time to eliminate the leader of the Resistance. But in each story, the villain has always been changed, well, in some way. As each villain gets more powerful than the last, it makes you wonder, what are they going to come up with next? And also, will the T-800 model overcome this powerful new villain as it always does? So, we've had the T-800, the T-1000, the T-X, Marcus Wright, who was a half-machine, half-human cyborg, and there's also the T-3000 Terminator, which was the most advanced model at the time. While the movies have given us a lot of new Terminators, it seems the comic books tend to stick with the original T-800 series for most of the stories. So, with the upcoming movie Terminator Dark Fate, what is the Rev-9 Terminator? How powerful is it? And what is its purpose? Well, in this video, we're going to cover all of that. According to information from websites, interviews, and movie trailers, the Rev-9 is not just one Terminator, but 2 of them combined. It has a solid endoskeleton body, which is covered in liquid metal, similar to the T-X Terminator. But, unlike other Terminators, this one can separate those 2 components and form 2 separate Terminator units. One of them looks like an upgraded T-800 model, and the other one is the liquid metal form, so it's a combination of a T-800 and a T-1000 in some way. The liquid metal portion can also descend on a target from multiple angles, so now you have 2 Terminators merged together, but they can separate at will. There was information through some interviews that Skynet was being replaced in the story. The Rev-9 is from something that is not Skynet, but it's similar to Skynet. Then we heard about something called Legion, which did not exist until humans created it. The director, Tim Miller, did say, the rise of AI is inevitable. If you change something in the past, it's going to manifest differently in the future, and that manifestation is the technology that the Rev-9 represents. Judgment Day is inevitable. This is not Skynet. This is Legion. So this could mean that Skynet is being replaced in the story by Legion. The Rev-9 is supposed to be a prototype. There were previous models such as the Rev-8 and Rev-7, but they weren't as bad. The Rev-9 is the bad one. This Terminator is sent back into time to eliminate Danny Ramos, and just like the T-1000, the liquid metal copy can form bladed weapons on its arms and also its body. There's a scene in one of the trailers that shows multiple Rev-9s on a battlefield. We can also see tentacles on their backs. This could be a scene from the future or maybe just a memory. One other interesting attribute about this Terminator is that it seems to show a little personality. The Rev-9 claims, "My whole body is a weapon," when going through a metal detector. It also apologizes before it takes down a bunch of Border Patrol agents, simply saying, "Sorry." There's even a scene when it tries to reason with Sarah Connor and the other heroes, asking, "Why not just let me have her?" It also has an exposed area on the back of its head. It's unclear why it has this design, but it is after all a prototype, so that could be the reason. The trailer also showed us how durable the endoskeleton is, able to survive standard gunfire and some explosives, and with the liquid metal covering its body, it has extra protection and available stabbing weapons. The liquid metal form can be slowed down by massive injuries, just like the T-1000, but its most noticeable feature is splitting into two terminators, which makes it twice as deadly. So, compared to the other Terminators we've seen before, which one is your favorite? Tell me in the comments section. King Kong, the ruler of Skull Island. Many of us have wondered why there are no others like him. Where are the other members of his species? During the movie Kong, Skull Island in 2017, we got a glimpse of what was left of Kong's parents in the boneyard. So that gave us a clue that there were others just like Kong. But why is he the only surviving member? Well, the origins of Kong are explained in the comic book Skull Island, The Birth of Kong. It also gives us a look into the final days of his parents. The story includes a team that is sent in to collect evidence and as much information as they can get. They have 72 hours for this mission and then they get out. At least, that was the plan. As quickly as they arrived, they are attacked by a swarm of cycle vultures. After the plane has taken heavy damage, the crew is forced to parachute down. The team is there to study the creatures on the island, and if they are truly ruled and controlled by Kong. One member wants to study the local people. Before they can plan their next move, they are attacked by death jackals. The group retreats to a nearby cave. Already suffering casualties, they still try to fight them off. Kong ends up saving them by squashing all the creatures by the cave, and then walks off. The survivors are also greeted by a group from the local tribe, and one of them speaks English. Both groups end up back in the tribe's base. They rest up, heal, and get information. The young member that speaks English learned from his father, who learned from another man in the Second World War. The member named Ricio has taken an interest in the medicine brew and drinks it often. It's here when Ricio starts to have visions of the past. Millions of years ago, this island paradise was the home to Kong's entire species. That is, until the skull crawlers came. They laid waste to everything. Both species had struggled in a war for dominance, to be at the top of the food chain. It wasn't just survival, it was a war of the gods. When the crew comes across a Dutch ship, they discover more paintings of Kong's species. But Ricio also starts to get more visions of the past. The Iwi people went to Skull Island to escape another tribe, only to come across the last two members of Kong's species. Kong's father and mother were the only two left, as all the others were slaughtered by the skull crawlers. The skull crawlers had emerged from their subterranean nesting grounds. They had a hyperadrenalized metabolism. It kept them in a constant state of starvation, so they came up to feed. The boneyard we saw in the movie was the den of the Kong superspecies, the last place to fall to the skull crawlers. The last two members were Kong's mother and father. They were fighting a battle that was hopeless. As his father defended his mother, Kong was born and brought into the world of blood, thunder, fire, and death. These were Kong's first impressions into this new world. Kong's mother would muster the strength to hide Kong in a cave. Then she went back to help Kong's father, who was on the brink of death. Even though he was a child, Kong still went through many emotions. As he watched the skull crawlers slaughter his mother, he felt hatred, rage, and fury. This would be the source of his strength. When it was all over, Kong emerged from the cave. As he looked at the lifeless bodies of his parents, his heart filled with sorrow. So he wept, but nobody would hear him. Kong only knew his mother for a few moments after being born, and to witness his parents being slaughtered at such a young age, you can see why Kong dislikes the skull crawlers. The rest of the story is about the human survivors waiting to be rescued, but the main focus of this comic book was about the birth of Kong and why he is the last of his kind. So that's a look into the past of Kong in terms of the comic books. What did you think about this story? Tell me in the comment section. How strong are the Infinity Stones? So first off, here's a little history. According to the story in the movies, the collector had explained some backstory of the Infinity Stones to the Guardians of the Galaxy. Before creation itself, there were 6 singularities: space, mind, reality, time, soul, and power. They were created by cosmic entities that were only known as myths. The four of them were called death, entropy, infinity, and eternity. When the universe exploded into existence, they created the Infinity Stones. Each stone would give you control of that power, and having all 6 stones would let you do anything you wanted. Because the stones have tremendous amounts of power, they can only be held by celestial beings. If a lower life form was to hold it, they would be destroyed by their power. But in the movies, it shows that celestial hybrids, sorcerers, and androids can hold the stones and harness the power within them. Some stones were placed within special containers. This prevented the user from being destroyed, like the Tesseract, the Orb, a necklace, and a scepter. This way, you don't have direct contact with the stone, but you can still use its power. The movie had shown us why the Infinity Gauntlet was made, to harness the power of all 6 stones at the same time. The gauntlet was made by Atri, who used the power of a star to forge various other weapons. Thanos had a plan to wipe out half the population in the galaxy, because they were consuming their resources too quickly, and in doing so, he would restore balance. Although it's a very evil way of solving the problem, you can understand what he's trying to do. So at the end of the movie, Thanos ultimately fulfilled his destiny. With a snap of his fingers, he wipes out half the population in the galaxy. But we also get to see something has happened to the Infinity Gauntlet. While the stones are still intact, the gauntlet seems to have been charred or damaged. Perhaps this was due to the immense power used for Thanos' wish. If the gauntlet is not able to sustain the power of the stones at this point, it leaves us wondering, what will happen to the stones and the gauntlet after this? My theory is that since the gauntlet was made by Atri, they could possibly just make another one. But at the end of the movie, the stones might be out of power. But in the comic books, they have shown that the stones can be reassembled if they are shattered or destroyed. So it's possible they can bring back the gauntlet and the Infinity Stones. There was a time in the comics when Adam Warlock was inside the Soul Stone, and he peered into Thanos' soul. Even though Thanos' wish cost him such a heavy price, he always knew he was not worthy of its power. Later on, Nebula steals a gauntlet, but she also doubts herself. She wonders if she can handle the power and responsibility. So if they're able to create another gauntlet and somehow power the stones once again, they can undo what Thanos did in the movie and restore everything back to normal. Nebula did this in the comic books, so it's possible it could happen in the movies. Now, the ending of the movie could be linked to the Soul World that was mentioned in the comic books. And while Thanos did have cosmic powers with all the Infinity Stones, there are still other entities that could challenge his power. The comics did mention that there are celestial beings that overlook the judgment of whoever tries to control every aspect of the universe. Even with the gauntlet and all the Infinity Stones, that person can still be overpowered by these entities. Because of Adam Warlock's history, he is unfit to hold all 6 stones. His new mission is to select 5 other beings to protect the stone. So despite Adam Warlock being a good guy, he still failed at being a divine entity, which makes him unworthy of having all the Infinity Stones in his possession. One last thing that connects the movies to the comic books is Thanos' mission, to wipe out half the sentient beings in the universe. This is linked to Mistress Death resurrecting Thanos, and through him, she would mold the universe into her liking. Thanos ends up fulfilling her wish as his own, and this is the famous scene where he snaps his fingers and wipes out half the life across the universe. There was some dialogue at the end of the Avengers movie in 2012. It talks about how humans are unruly and they cannot be ruled. It says this: to challenge them would be to court death. This could be seen as a nod to Thanos' love towards Mistress Death in the comic books. He would do anything for her affection. But after being ignored by her for so long, he just creates Taraxia, a woman who loves him and stands by his side. So even if Thanos had control of the Infinity Stones, other beings would step in to restore balance at some point. It also shows that the Infinity Stones do have their limits and can be destroyed. And just because you have the Infinity Stones, it does not mean you are unstoppable, so keep that in mind. So that wraps up the video on how strong the Infinity Stones are. If you enjoyed this video, then leave a like rating on it, and subscribe with notifications turned on. So what villain do you want to see show up in a movie? Let me know in the comment section. My choice would be Onslaught. Thanks for watching. My name is Acid Glow, and I'll see you in the next video.